how to insulate existing suspended floors. So, Chris, we're often asked about insulating suspended floors. I think suspended floors can be a really good way to start as an initial energy efficiency measure. Human biology is such that we're quite sensitive to heat gain and loss through our feet. And if you have an existing suspended floor, there's really often only 20 or 30 mil of material.
Yeah, there's not a lot there, is there?
Your body and essentially the outside. And especially if it's a suspended timber floor with timber floorboards, they're often prone to drafts through the floorboards and so on. So addressing the suspended floor whilst being often disruptive in terms of lifting up the floor and sort of decanting occupants, it's often a reasonably achievable way of making an initial energy efficiency measure. What are you thinking about when you
so the simple thing to do is to drape a breather membrane between the joists. Either staple it or tape it to the very bottom edge inside each pair of joists. Put a fairly rigid, flexible bat like the Stagger Flex in between the joists. Fully fill it. Vapor control layer over the top and tape it all the way around the perimeter. This is sort of simple synopsis. That's great. That's a really easy way to do it. It's quick. It's cheap. It's quite accessible to most people. Most people could DIY that. There are quite a few caveats with this. So floors are very moist areas, and the timber in the floor is usually right on the upper limit of where it wants to be from a kind of moisture point of view with respect to decay. So you do need to be really careful. You've got to maintain ventilation. It's got to be cross ventilation as well on opposite faces of the building. The little dwarf walls that hold the joists have got to be hit and miss bricks as well, not just a continuous layer of brick, because otherwise the only air path is obviously between the joists. You've got to put an oversight over the floor as well, because a lot of people think that it's better to allow all this moisture to come out of the ground and up into your floor void and it will ventilate out. Well, the last thing you want to do when you've got a load of timber, which is really sensitive to moisture, is to encourage loads of moisture out of the ground and let it sort of accumulate under your floor.
Especially when you've just added a layer of insulation and you've resisted the heat flow into the floor void. The conditions there become much more onerous. So having a layer to attenuate the flow of moisture out of the subsoils is quite.
That's it, and it doesn't have to be anything complicated. It usually would be a layer of DPM or a layer of polythene over the existing ground. So it'd be sand to sort of blind the surface, layer of polythene, more sand to keep that in place. But you're trying to prevent evaporation out of the soil. That's all fine where all of the ventilation requirements can be met. But there's plenty of places around the country. Terraced houses, particularly in wet areas like we do a lot of work in Manchester. Manchester's a nightmare for this because quite often the house has been extended. You don't get cross ventilation from front to back. You got really clayey soil which is wet most of the time, so it's really difficult to actually effectively do this. And the kind of nuclear option in those cases is actually to get rid of the suspended floor and actually turn it into a solid floor. So then that's where we're looking at things like foam glass. You can kind of bulk fill big voids with foam glass. You've got the insulation, you've got no capillary rise of moisture, so you effectively fill that whole void with and turn it into a nice warm dry space, and then you can obviously load your floor back on top. So when I'm advising people, that's what I'm generally recommending.
And the advantage of that obviously is the organic material, the structural timber joist, comes out of the insulation zone essentially. So you've got your recycled foam glass layer, which is the sort of weight bearing, moisture managing and sort of non-capillary layer supporting floor finishes above, in our instance, lithoderm underfloor heating tiles, for example, which are exceptionally good at dispersing heat as an underfloor heating system, but sat over a sort of otherwise kind of quite moisture safe.
Well, it removes the whole screed requirement for screed as well. So you're putting a dry, resilient layer over the top, and you can put your floor on top of that. So, but those are the sort of options that I usually put forward.
So suspended floor, fairly cheap, fairly easy, quite accessible way to make a significant energy efficiency and sort of comfort upgrade, but has some complexities. And the sort of nuclear option, as you say, is to go from suspended to a solid floor system.
Definitely.
Yeah. Very good.
Excellent.